And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so incredibly excited to host celebrity author, the queen of thrillers, the celebrated internationally best-selling storyteller, Karin Slaughter today, here to tell us about her brand new book, False Witness. Karin, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Welcome to my partner in crime, pun intended, Murder by the Book. Tell us about your fabulous book.
Wow, that's such a setup, man. I don't want to disappoint people. I'm really bad at talking about my books, though.
Oh my God.
So this is a thriller, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Bad things happen in it, really bad things that I tell you about. But at its core, it's a story about two sisters who experience a really bad trauma early in their lives, and we catch up with them 20 years later, and we see how that trauma has played out as adults and how it's changed them in some small and some big ways, which sort of ties in with the pandemic, because who the hell knows where we're going to be in 20 years, probably on a shrink's couch somewhere.
Yes, exactly. As we are just starting to emerge from our isolation caves, coming out now that I'm vaccinated, I'm like, hello, friends. I haven't seen you a year and a half. And re-entering the world, I have been wondering about how this is going to affect us all, our mental health, our social skills. I'm more awkward than ever. I don't know about you. So
Yes.
It's an adjustment for sure. So Karin, let me ask you, this is actually the first book that I'm sorry, you know what? I'm going to pause and welcome all of our friends. So welcome everyone who is watching on Facebook. Welcome everybody who is watching on YouTube. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so happy to have you. And you know what? I actually see that we have, I think, an editing. We have a technical problem, and we are not streaming to one of the channels. I'm going to try to fix that right now. Let's get that going. It looks like there. Let me see if this will add in. It's thinking sometimes. Okay, now we have Murder by the Book's Facebook as well.
I knew it'd be McKenna. I knew it.
We love McKenna. We love McKenna. So if you're just joining us from Murder by the Book, if you're watching from YouTube, if you're watching from Facebook, welcome, friends. If you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, here's the drill. Every week, I handpick featured authors and give you uncensored access to them, so you can ask the incredible Karin Slaughter anything about her writing process, about her story process, where she gets these ideas, anything that is hanging out in your brain. Get it going in the comments, and I will get them right on over to her. And meanwhile, I see comments already coming in. Courtney says, thank you, Sara and Karin, for this. I loved False Witness. I spent all day locked away in my daughter's room. She's away at school to finish. Courtney, you are all of us. Tell us what you love about the book. Anissa, top community member, saying, hello, ladies. Hey, Anissa, good to have you there in South Carolina. Sharon saying, hi from Minnesota. Sharon, welcome. Anissa would like to know, what is the craziest piece of research you have ever uncovered? Ooh, that's a dangerous question to ask Karin Slaughter. Karin,
well, it is. Well, this book in particular, I had a lot of interesting facts about animals. Yes. Because I love animals. I think if you want to know why we're so screwed up as human beings, you just look at animals and it makes sense. Yes. But one thing actually that I couldn't find a place for in the book is the fact that, you know how mice that you have at home in a cage, they have a wheel in there. Well, if you just put a wheel in the middle of a field where you know wild mice are going to be, they'll get on that wheel and they'll go for hours. So that's a crazy little thing. And I love that. I love that they're just out there doing their cardio, loving the wheel. I found out that octopuses will just punch other fish for no reason. So they're like the assholes of the ocean. You know, they just go up to small fish and they just punch them really hard in the nose. Yeah.
What? Karin, this is crazy. Anissa's saying, wow. Anissa, me too. Wait, Karin, did you do all of this because of the mother who's a bit of a menagerie zookeeper kind of eccentric character? Was this for the mother or character or?
Well, it was mostly for Callie, who's one of the sisters, and Dr. Jerry. And, you know, it was just this really crazy opportunity to put all these animal facts I've been collecting for my entire life since I first got a animal a day calendar when I was a kid. into the book.
Okay. Now, anyone who follows Karin online knows that Karin loves cats and she celebrates Catter Day with adorable cat memes. But Karin, it seems like do you love all animals equally, or you really just
I
doubling down on the
do.
cat?
No, I really do. I don't like, I wouldn't want a dog, but I like other people's dogs. They're just too needy. But yeah, I love cats because you have to earn their respect every single day.
Yeah. Okay. I have a cat-sized dog who's very cat-like in that she withholds her affection and love for me, which is, heartbreaking and hard. But I do respect the process. But yeah, you've got all sorts of animals in this, so that is fascinating that you really did, undertake that research process. Thank you for letting us know. Leslie's saying hello from Canada. Gail Top Community saying hello from Massachusetts. Wendy, hello from Toronto. This is so cool. We have an international group here today. Welcome, Rhonda. Welcome, Marilyn. We have so many people. I'm so thrilled to have you all here. Okay, Karin, some people submitted who can't be here live today, submitted questions in advance. And let's get to a few of those. So Sheila Collins from Mystery and Thriller Mavens, my group, said, I really like that her latest book takes place in 2020 and she captures the way lives were affected by wearing masks, social distancing, crazy conspiracy theories, and the like. This is actually the first book that I read where I saw the pandemic on the page, and I saw that you wrote about that at the end and your author's note. And it's such an effective tool for ramping up the tension, just increasing my anxiety. I'm sweating as I'm reading. Tell us about your choice. Not everyone's doing that. Some people are consciously not including the pandemic. Some people just don't know how to, they're not ready to. Tell us about your choice to do that.
Well, very early in the pandemic, I was doing a lot of Facebook videos with author friends, just like, hey, how's the pandemic there? You got any toilet paper? And I asked all of them, are you going to include it? And, like Lisa Unger said, oh, no, I write for escapism. And, a lot of people were saying not now, like, they were going to eventually include it, but they just couldn't wrap their head around it. And then I talked to Mike Connolly, and he said that he actually had pulled back one of his Lincoln Lawyer books because he wanted to incorporate it. And when I read it, I thought, this is really important, but it's not, it's right there at the beginning. He's got a character who's in prison. And as we know, COVID is just like torn through our prisons.
Yes.
Cruise ships, old people's homes, like anywhere you're in a confined space and you don't have a lot of opportunity for fresh air and to move about. Yeah. So, it really worked well for what he was doing, but he wrote about it at the very beginning when people were like, wow, what's going on? Is this really going to affect us? And I thought, you know what? Mike's book's going to come out before mine. And if he gets dinged for it, then I can pull back. But then as I started writing it, I thought, this really does play into the story very well because, you have people who are socially distanced and masking and, the fact that being in prison is something that Lee had to do because she's a lawyer. So she went to visit her client. She got COVID in prison. She brought it home and she gave it to her sister. She feels guilt over that. Her sister has complications from it. I mean, so that it really worked out in a way to aid the plot in a certain nuanced way that I didn't anticipate. But it helped solve a really big problem. And the women reading this know that there is nothing more judgmental than other mothers. And so I have Lee, who has a teenage daughter, and she's not living with the daughter. And there was no way other than it's in the middle of a pandemic. She's living with her father because she's in the suburbs and she's going to a private school. That was like the only excuse I could come up with that would be appropriate and where women just wouldn't freaking hate her for not living with her daughter. So the pandemic solved that problem.
Oh, interesting. Yes. And I loved how you talk about Lee and her, estranged divorced husband as Oh, I just heard a weird echo, but I'm probably too close to the mic. That she is talking about that they're diehard liberals and they want their kid to stay in public school, but the public school classes are so big, and so they pull her out and put her in private school. And then Lee, of course, has to go work at the big law firm instead of doing her, sort of soul searching work, legal work, and that plays into this because that brings her to this client. But that really just ramps up the tension of she's got to get her kid to safety. She's got to get her kid in smaller classes and pods, and I loved how you used the pandemic to both put that on the page and also amp up the tension strategically. I haven't seen that on the page or on the screen. I saw my first Law and Order episode where they were wearing masks. I was like, oh crap, it's real now.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God. I love that. Okay. Wendy is saying your videos were amazing.
Oh, thank you, Wendy.
Yay. Sharon would like to know, how do you think of such terrifying ways for a character to die? Are some based on actual news stories? Another person was asking this as well. So let's talk about that.
First, when a character does die, whether it's a bad person who you think should die, because that's one of the joys of writing a crime novel is the bad person's always caught in the end and punished somehow. Not always with death, but sometimes with that, which can feel really rewarding in a way that we don't get in real life, especially as women. We don't normally see men punished for the crimes they commit against women. So, but I do try to incorporate realistic ways. I'm not one of these writers who comes up with fantastical sort of Batman plans where they're on a belt going toward a sawmill sort of thing. It needs to feel organic to the story. But, I also want to make sure that I am always remembering that these crimes happen to real people in real life, especially when I'm discussing violence against women. And one thing I do that's actually much harder than having a victim die is let them live and talk about how they endure the trauma, how they manage to put themselves back together, the choices they make that sometimes aren't the best choices for them. That is really difficult writing. But the thing is, I'm never going to be able to find a way to kill someone that hasn't already been done and probably been done more horrifically. As far as I'm not a murderer. I don't have that sadistic mind. And I don't have that need for or that hatred that many men feel toward women. I mean, we need to, in Mexico, they have the crime of femicide now. In Georgia, killing a woman because you hate women is a hate crime, but nationally we don't have that designation. And I think that more and more we're seeing violence against women as not just a general violence, but these men who are perpetrating these crimes really, really hate women, whether they come from the incel community or the white supremacist movement, which, shockingly never been good for women, even white women. They're not like, and let's give rights to white women. They're like, so that's what I want to write about in a realistic way.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. And a follow-up question from Kerry Wellesley to start from the Reese Witherspoon Book Club. She would like to ask if it's difficult for you to write such dark subject matter, and also what you do to relax and get into a more peaceful, positive mindset after writing something so dark for a while. Great question, Kerry.
Well, it's not really difficult for me to write those violent passages. I want to be as realistic as possible. And one of the reasons is because when I was growing up and I was a very little girl, we would go to my grandmother's house on Sunday after church for dinner. And sometimes she would have a black eye or a cut lip. Occasionally she would have a broken bone. And my uncles would tease her about being clumsy. Well, as I got older, I realized no one's this clumsy. This is my grandfather beating the hell out of her, and we're not talking about it. And I can testify that not talking about it did not help my grandmother. It only helped my grandfather. So I feel it's very important to talk about what happens to women. It's not sexy. It's not titillating. It's horrible. It's, it's a power imbalance. It's hatred. It's all of these things. And I want to show that for what it is. And, again, those scenes feel very technical to me. I'm very careful about what I put on the page. A lot of times what you can come up with in your mind is much more terrible than what I can write. So I will suggest a lot of things that, hopefully you'll pick up from there and scare yourself. But what happens next, so a bad thing happens to Callie and Lee. How did the tentacles of this reach into their adult lives? What does it do to them? How are they scarred indelibly from this horrific act against them? And how do they move on? That's the hard part of writing.
Oh, Karin, I love that. I love that because I think so many people think of the violence as the main event, and they're not thinking of it in this way. So thank you for this insight. This is really powerful. Thank you for that. And Sharon is saying, please no spoilers. Karin, absolutely, there will be no spoilers. So don't worry. This is all everything we're saying is just on the back cover. So no spoilers here. Don't worry. We wouldn't do that to you here on the show. I just want to make sure I'm getting all of the questions here. Okay, this is actually a funny question. Sharon would like to know, as a mystery writer, did you wear any scary masks during COVID?
Well, I have a pinhead. So I had to get children's masks for them to fit well.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm like a little person. Everybody, that's the first thing, negative comment I always get at signings. People say, I thought you would be bigger. So kids' masks are like dog faces or, snouts, things like that. Which I had to take my car in for service and the guy was giving me the runaround and I'm like yelling at him with this dog mask on. And he was like, lady, you got to stop. It's hard for me to take you seriously.
Oh my God, that's so
But
funny.
I think I rock a good mask game. I found some good ones that were later in the pandemic. They had the adjustable ones, right?
Yes.
And I can't wear I don't wear the paper ones well because I have all kinds of allergies. So I just get like this rash. I'll tell you though, I do like I like wearing masks because you have to make less of an effort when you go out, I think. Because, this like, it's sort of with all the zooming, I don't care what the back of my hair looks like, it's like, it could be a saddle Oxford back there. I just don't care. But I like wearing the mask and I haven't gotten a cold in almost 2 years. So
right. It's so popular. Even when we go back to non-mask, I'm still going to wear one when I take the subway because the subway's disgusting and I don't want to get the flu of the year or whatever. George is saying pinhead, LOL. He's laughing out loud. Diana's saying you are so funny. I totally agree. Vicky is saying she absolutely loves your books, Karin. Diane is saying hello. Oh, so great to have you, Diane. Sharon's saying she ordered the book. She doesn't have it yet. She can't wait to read it. Vicky saying, yes, continue to wear a mask. It's important. Absolutely. Especially as we get all of these variants. Sorry. Leslie, you're asking Queen Slaughter here. A good question. What do you think is the easiest murder to get away with?
Well, a stranger murder,
Ooh, why?
Well, because you have no connection to them. I mean, Patricia Highsmith had it right when she had Strangers on a Train. Where two completely unrelated people decide to kill the person in their life, let a stranger kill the person in their lives, so I'll kill your mother if you kill my wife, sort of thing. Of course they got caught, but the trick is not to get caught. What's really interesting to me as I go into crime labs and I talk to cops, most of the time when people get caught, it's because they can't keep their mouth shut. They tell somebody about it, or they brag about it, or they spend a lot of money, or they, they do something like that. Usually they're not criminal masterminds. I mean, that the majority of people who commit crimes just aren't smart. And one thing I found really shocking was that DNA is mostly used to solve burglaries because rapists are really smart. They know about DNA. They wear condoms. They're careful. Burglars drink your milk. They cut themselves. They're looking through your kitchen drawer and they cut themselves on a knife and they lead some blood. Or, a lot of crime scene people I know, if they go into a burgled house, the first thing they do is they swab the milk and they get the DNA off that. So yeah. I mean, it's really crazy, or people who use duct tape, they'll cut the duct tape with their mouth. That's DNA. So stuff like that, you just can't plan for. You can't plan for sweat dropping off your body, but a lot of times, even if you're in a house, you don't leave fingerprints. You don't, we think from watching television that you can't walk through somewhere without leaving forensics. And that's just not true. A lot of people do it all the time, especially in a well-traveled area. You might get 60 different people have DNA that go in this one area. So, if you're going to kill somebody, pick a stranger in a public place and be calm about it.
Karin, why do you think people want to talk about it? I know this to be true because I hosted Bruce Coffin, who was the head detective in Portland, Maine for 30 years of the homicide division. And he said that he was investigating a murder and the perpetrator came into the police station and wanted to offer his help to help find the guy. The guy was him.
Yeah.
Why would you do something like that?
Guilt and anxiety. I think anxiety, we've all learned a lot about anxiety during the pandemic.
Yes.
And it's funny because a lot of people say criminals want to get caught. There's always that serial killer moment. But the thing is about particularly serial killers, they don't want to get caught. They love getting away with it, and if they get away with it once, they think, wow, I'm really smart. And then they get this opinion about themselves that they're these masterminds, and then they make mistakes because they just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. It's not that they want to get caught. It's just that they're arrogant and they step on their own dicks.
Oh my God, Karin, I love you. You're fantastic. I am loving this insight into murderers. I'm learning a lot here. Okay, Jane would like to know, this is a tough one because I know it's like picking your kids, but we've had 2 people ask this now. So Karin, we've got to know, what is your favorite book you have written and why? I know it's like picking your favorite kid, but you got to pick a favorite kid.
Well, you should say favorite cat. I love them all for different reasons. I really love False Witness, and I'm not just saying that because it's this one, because I think I did a lot of things in there that I wanted to do. But you know how everybody gets pissed off at the Academy Awards about who wins Best Actor, and what they don't realize is the person who's voting on Best Actor is an actor who is looking for actor things. And so with my books, I might love them for a story or whatever, but I'm looking at who I was as a writer then, and what I went through when I wrote the book. Was I able to write realistically about the themes that I set out to? Was I able to say something new and different? And that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. And you'll learn this as you write more books. You've got one published, you're working on your next one, but sometimes as a writer, you have these spurts of growth where you think, wow, I really have done something. I've taken my game up a notch. I felt that way with Criminal, with The Good Wife, the Good Daughter. I felt that with this book, Pretty Girls, The Silent Wife. I just felt like, I'm really coming into this, and it's not getting easier because it should never get easier. But I'm able to do different things. And to me, that's what keeps it exciting.
Oh, that's fascinating, Karin. I love that. So this book was a False Witness was another growth spurt for you as a writer from a craft.
I felt so, yeah. I really liked what I was able to do with it and how I was able to talk about the social situations. I write a lot, quite often, about a lot of things that are going on in society, like how we treat prison inmates, how we treat women, and the pandemic has really put a magnifying glass on all these issues. So it gave me a new platform to talk about things that we call political, but really aren't political. At the end of the day, if we just kind of use our brains, we're like, wow, we actually agree on all of this, a great deal of all of this. And, there's a middle point where we can compromise and maybe make change.
Yes, exactly. If we all just step back from that state of fight and say what makes sense here, what is decent here, we could have reached that agreement. Absolutely. I love that. Thank you. Sheila says this book has very little focus on the detectives. Was that a break from the usual focus on the investigation? Give us the skinny on that.
It was, and it's very hard when you're writing a crime novel to not write it from the perspective of investigators, because there's a certain framework with an investigation. I mean, they call them police procedurals for a reason, because, a bad thing happens. The cops show up. They have a reason to talk to suspects. They have a reason to look at forensics. But if you're not in that arena, then, I learned this with Pretty Girls, where I have two women who are crime adjacent. One of them gets pulled into a crime unwittingly, and she has to figure out how to get herself out of this in a believable way. I don't write feisty gals solving crimes and sipping mimosas kind of books. Those are great, but that's not the kind of book that I write, So it needs to be believable that these women would investigate this crime. And for Lee, of course, in that first chapter, or by the second chapter, you see that she's got a really vested interest in figuring out what the hell is going on. And that's the really big hook for me is, okay, well, why would this otherwise sane person want to involve herself with this really horrible criminal? It has to be a believable choice, because most of the time you'd say, tap me out, man, I'm not going to do this. But so I have to find out a reason for her to be there.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Great questions, Sheila. Karin, thank you for that, because it really does. I mean, it feels so natural. Like, of course, Lee has to get involved, but that's because you carefully crafted it for us to feel nothing else. But of course, she's got to do this. So this is really cool to know the behind the perspective. Vicky would like to know, who do you read and why? What authors? Great question.
I read a lot of nonfiction and historical fiction, because we tend to repeat ourselves. A book I'm currently reading is called Unwell Women. It's just basically how crappy medicine has been for women, like from the beginning. It goes back to Hippocrates, and, when they thought that a womb inside a woman moved around her body. So if she was being mouthy, they'd make her drink something bitter, so the womb would go back down. Of course, that explained periods, and, they were like, yeah, we've got this all figured out. And it wasn't until 2014 that a female doctor said, hey, let's look at the clitoris. What is this thing? Because it was just, to men for so many years, a failed penis. And she's like, wow, look at all these nerves. It's bigger than we thought. But that was 2014, right? That they finally did that. So that just how women have been historically screwed in medicine, that was really fascinating. But I love crime writers. One of my favorites is Denise Mina, and she writes about a more typical criminal. She's a Scottish writer, so it's all usually set in Glasgow. But, most criminals, they're not really bad people. They just make a bad mistake. They make a bad choice, right? And we're big fans of saying, oh, look at this very successful person. He made good choices. And it's like, well, he had to choose between Harvard and Yale, right? Most people have to choose from abject poverty and, working for very little wages, right? Which sometimes is the same thing, right?
Right.
So most people don't have good choices to make. But with Denise, she writes about how, they make the least horrible choice, and that gets them in a little bit of trouble. And then they scramble and they make another mistake, and that gives them in more trouble. And then suddenly the police are involved, and suddenly their entire lives are ruined just by making bad mistakes. And, so many people in our prisons and jails, whether it's through mental illness or, not having good choices, wind up having their lives completely destroyed. Because if you're not a criminal when you go to prison, you are when you come out in general. So, that's one of the reasons why I love Denise. I love Alifair Burke, Lisa Gardner, Lisa Unger, all the Lisas. I think we're in a really wonderful time right now. where we've got so many wonderful books to read. And I feel really lucky to be part of that group that's able to write them.
Yay. I love that. And you are part of the group. You're such a luminary in this space of storytelling. And we are so thrilled to hear from you today, Karin, and to be able to host you and chat with you. Vicky's saying she can't wait to read False Witness. She just got it on Audible. Yay, Vicky, enjoy. Sharon would like to know, when you are writing a book, do you read other mysteries or do you check out of books? Do you check out books in other genres when you're writing?
I generally read nonfiction or I'll read magazines. I still get a lot of paper magazines. I'm like the only one left in America doing that, I think. Oh, you, yeah. Because I like reading The Atlantic, and I like reading a lot of, like, the Marshall Project is a great blog about prison inmates, and I like a diversity of ideas in my reading.
Yes.
And so, but I can't really read crime fiction when I'm writing a crime novel because it pulls me away from that. I love puzzles, and it's why I can't play apps with games, because if I can't do it, I will spend like 18 hours trying to figure it out. So it's like that when I read a crime novel. It's like, I can't start it and just put it down and go back to my book. I'm going to have to read the whole thing.
I'm going to have to, same. I can't leave a book unfinished. Sheila's saying she loves The Atlantic. Yes, ma'am. That is a good one. Susan would like to know, where do your ideas come from? So you talked about, wanting to tell the stories of women, wanting to bring violence against women out to the light, because not talking about it doesn't solve it, and actually only benefits the aggressor. But did you, in terms of, and of course the pandemic is informing this book, but what gave you the idea of these two sisters and coming back to this life-changing event in their past?
Lee came to me. So the sisters are Lee and Callie, and Lee came to me about 3 years ago. And a lot of times with my standalone novels, the character starts first. If it's a Will Trent and Sarah Linton book, then I'm pretty confident it is from the outset, because it starts with a crime. And I think, well, how's this going to screw up their lives, right? How's it going to make them miserable? But so I was reading I was working on a Will Trent book, and there's a character who's called Faith Mitchell, who's his partner. And Faith is someone I have to do a lot of research for, because she's a mother, and I don't have kids that I know of. And so I have to do a lot of research, and I really don't like children. I find them very annoying. And so I read mommy blogs, and they also find children annoying. So that's, sort of affirming. But I saw this cartoon that someone had posted, and it was all the different kids you see at your kid's school musical. And they had the nose picker and the mama's boy and the stage hog. And my first thought was, holy crap, it never even crossed my mind that parents had to sit through this crap, right? And that's such an important part of a parent's life, is watching their kid and pretending like they're really fascinated. And so I thought, okay, well, let me start the book with that. And Lee came to me, and then I thought of her husband, Walter, and he's playing fantasy football on his phone. And so Lee says, she's doing her fantasy mom apocalypse. Like, which mom would I want on my team if shit got real? So obviously I'd want the one who made the math teacher cry, the one who always has snacks, the one who punched a dog who was trying to bite her kid, right? The one who will sleep with anybody. So she's like rounding out her team. And that, for me, was where the book started off, was like, okay, well, let me fill in these details about who this woman is. She's a lawyer. In some ways, she was an homage to my friend Alifair Burke, because when Alifair was growing up in Kansas, her dad was a poor college professor. And, Alifair was always hustling. She was working at Gap. She was at Benetton. She was doing, she ended up at Stanford. She got a law degree. She was a prosecutor in Portland. She's a law professor now. She writes her own books. She writes with Mary Higgins Clark. I mean, but she came from these really hard scrabble kind of beginnings.
Yeah.
And to me, I thought, that really keyed me into Lee, because I thought, well, let me start her off somewhere where she has no advantages.
Yes.
And she ends up at Northwestern. And so how does she get there? What, so that's really how it came together for me, was who is this person and how am I going to make her life miserable? Because that's really what I do really well, is, make people miserable in my books.
Oh my gosh, you are cracking me up. And everyone, Vicky's saying she is just loving this interview. Vicky, me too. I mean, we're having so much fun. Heidi says, you are hilarious. Carrie is saying, ha ha ha, the mom who gets it right here. Absolutely. The Birkin carrying bitches. I love that line. I literally laughed out loud at that one. Sharon is saying, this interview is great. Just wow. Susan saying, I noticed you don't smile very much. Is it because you have so much crime in your life or books? You are very beautiful.
That sounds like something a mom would say, Susan. Thank you. I don't know. I guess I'm not much of a smiler. That's one of the reasons why I love wearing a mask, There's
no pressure.
Yeah,
exactly.
I did do these event with Foxtail Books in Atlanta, outside of Atlanta. And we all had pictures taken in our masks. And I realized when I got in the car to go home that I was smiling in all the pictures, and even though the mask was covering my face. So I do smile for pictures, if that's a consolation, even though no one can tell.
Sharon wants to know if the pirate hat's going to come out, Karen.
Well, I'm going to do Friends in Fiction. I got my parrot over here ready to go. So when I'm on Friends in Fiction, I don't know. It worked out really well because, this woman was premiering the cover of her new book and it had a ship on it. And while that was on the screen, I thought, let me get my pirate hat. Let me just roll with this.
Oh, I love that. Vicky is saying you are so awesome. And I understand your point of view. Vicky, me too. I'm also a woman who has chosen to be child free. And there's not that many of us. And it's kind of taboo to say, but I'm saying it. So yes, I am loving this conversation. Karen, another question that was submitted in advance from a fellow Karen King Matlock. She said, I absolutely love you, Karin Slaughter. She recommends your Will Trent series all the time. These characters are like her friends. She would like to know, who do you love more, Jeffrey Tolliver or Will Trent?
Oh, that's a mean question, Man, I love them both for different reasons. I did write about both of them in The Silent Wife. And it was a juggling act because I have these two men who are very important to Sarah Linton at two different times in her life. Sarah has grown up with me. I've let her age, not the way I have, not as rapidly, but I've let her age a little bit. And, if you think about in your 20s, you're making so many mistakes. In your 30s, you're like, geez, now I got to get a house. Why did I drink all those Jello shots? I got a car payment. I got student loans, and your 40s, you're like, fuck it, and so Sarah is at a different age and a different point in her life with these two different men. And Jeffrey is very confident. He's a nice looking guy. He knows it. He's comfortable being the center of attention. Lee, for Will, he doesn't have that kind of physical confidence, even though he's a good looking guy. He's more likely to be in the corner at the party, petting the dog that wandered into the room than he is to be the one in the middle telling the story. And Sarah is a different person with each guy. So, I think a lot of people can relate to this, and I say this about parenting too. You're a mother you mother your child how your child needs to be mothered. So you're different with one versus the other. And, the really independent kid, you're not going to, put your arm around them all the time and try to kiss on them like you will the one who's like a little needy. And so, not that Sarah's a mother, but she has these two different men in her life, and she's a different person because of who they are which is kind of the beauty of being in a relationship. You know, if you're in a good relationship, they bring out good in different parts of your personality.
I love that. Susan would like to know do you have any other hobbies? Do you have any hobbies, writing obviously being your career? What music do you listen to? So on the show, Christina McDonald, sweet blonde mom looking lovely lady, shared that she actually writes her books to pounding trance music from her clubbing days in her 20s till the walls shake. Saul Lelchuk shared that he likes to write to French pop music. Very, very unexpected. Karin, what do you listen to? What do you write to? And what are your hobbies?
Well, I love reading and I love being on the treadmill. I love mini golf, putt-putt. It's one of my favorites. Yeah. But you know, when I'm writing, it has to be completely quiet. And I have a cabin in the North Georgia mountains and I go up there. I won't even take my cats because they're too distracting because, you know, they're assholes. They only want to be there when you don't want them there. So I don't listen to music, but I do listen to music when I'm driving up there. And it really depends on what I'm going to write. You know, sometimes I'm listening to a little Tupac. Sometimes it's Dolly Parton. Sometimes it's Ariana Grande, who I met in a bathroom once, and she sang to me a little while. It was pretty cool. Yeah. It was crazy. I walk in and she's in the stall singing, and then we go to wash our hands. I'm like, young lady, you have a beautiful voice. And she said, thank you. And she looked up. I was like, that's Ariana Grande. Yeah, so those are the sorts of odd things that happen to me.
So you went into the bathroom and she was in her stall singing away in the bathroom stall. Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah, I didn't even want to flush because I was like, wow, she's just killing it. You really should try this professionally.
Leslie just said she choked on her dinner. She's laughing so hard. Okay, we've achieved our goal today. We made someone choke while laughing. Oh, that is really funny. So then what was she singing? One of her songs or?
Yeah, you know, it wasn't one of her songs yet. I think she was working on one of them, but I saw Pete Davidson outside and I've got like junkie radar and I saw him and I was like, junkie. And then I was like, wait, that's Pete Davidson. So it kind of made sense that she'd be in the bathroom. So that tells you it was a few years ago. But I don't really remember the harmony she was singing, but I'd like to tell myself it was Thank You Next.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was shortly after that old Pete was gone.
Yeah. Pete went the way of the dodo bird.
Yeah, which I actually started paying attention to because I called my publicist. I was like, I just met Ariana Grande. She was like, why didn't you get a picture? And I'm like, do you know how weird it is when you're in a toilet and someone wants a picture with you? Because that's happened to me. So I try not to be weird to other people that way.
Yeah.
And she was like, my publicist went and talked to me. She was like, I can't believe you didn't get a picture.
Oh my God, this is hilarious. Speaking of junkies, no, I shouldn't say that. Addiction. That just reminded me. I don't want to use that word though, so I apologize. Sheila would like to know, how did you research the addiction and drug stuff? Was that depressing? Because that's a really somber part of the book. We won't spoil it, but there is a character who's struggling in there. What was the process of research like, and was it depressing for you, Karin?
Well, yes and no. You know, I think that we all know someone or have a family member who struggled with addiction. And we should say this character identifies herself as a junkie. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and she's has this heroin addiction. She knows it's going to kill her eventually. Like most people who struggle with addiction do have that sort of fatalistic attitude of, I can't control this. It's eventually going to be the end of me. But it was also an opportunity to humanize someone struggling with addiction, because we tend to look at junkies in a very binary way, right? You know, they're either pathetic or they're criminals and manipulators. And, you know, drug addiction I think is something you should look at in the same way you look at mental illness, because there's the illness and then there's the underlying personality. Well, we all know people who are assholes. And, you know, if they're mentally ill, they're still assholes, right?
Yes.
And we know people who are really good people.
Yes.
and who struggle with certain things, and that they're still at their core very good people, but
Yeah.
this addiction or this illness manifests itself in negative ways, right? So
Yeah.
it's important to separate that. And
Yeah.
so at her very core, this character is a good person who
Mhm.
does bad things because she has a physical, psychological addiction to heroin. And I really wanted to show that. I wanted her to be a human being with love and, a sense of humor and friendships and a family. And I wanted you to understand where she was coming from. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about how absolutely stupid we are when it comes to helping people who want help with
Yes.
addiction. AA is wonderful if it works for you, but by their own statistics, it works for about 5% of people who join the program. NA, especially with heroin, is an abject failure for the majority of people. Now, that's not to dismiss it. It works well for the people it works for, but some it just does not work. Rehab, again, you have failure after failure. So we're saying to these people with addiction, AA, NA, rehab, even though we know most of them, it's not going to be effective. The majority of people who stop using drugs do it because they just get tired of it. They have a natural recovery. The people who cannot pull themselves out from that, we know with all kinds of research that we've done, someone who's addicted to heroin, the more positive outcome that you can have is through giving them maintenance doses. And it could take months, it could take years, but it allows them to stay in the community, to stay with their families. You don't see children put into the system because the dad can't go to work because he's looking for drugs. And I mean, but there's this puritanical knee-jerk thing we have about, hey, we need to punish these people. We need to put them in prison. We need to, and once you're in that prison pipeline, we don't, people who don't have relatives who have been in prison or jail don't understand that once you're in that system, even if you do your time, you pay your dues, you pay off your penalties, society continues to punish you for the rest of your life. Whether it's denying you voting rights, denying you housing assistance, denying, all these ways that we continually punish people for making a mistake or having an addiction or doing something stupid or, and violent criminals obviously are a different class.
Yeah.
But the majority of people in a lot of our prisons and jails are not violent offenders, right? A lot of them have mental illness. A lot of them are just, have made bad choices or whatever. And a lot of them are dealing with drug addiction. I mean, we talk about the spike in overdoses that we've seen during the pandemic. It's been much more horrific in our prisons and jails where drugs are much more dangerous because they're not, the street value ones. There's at least some quality control. In prison, that's not the case. So you have people who are doing drugs. They don't know what they are. They're just desperate. So that's something that I wanted to write about in the book. And was it depressing? Well, yeah, but more so not from the perspective of the person who's addicted, but from a person who pays taxes. It's like, why are we doing this? I'm spending trillions of dollars on the war on drugs. Can you imagine if that money was spent on schools, paying teachers a living wage, paying police officers a decent wage, giving them appropriate training, social workers, all of that? I mean, we could have just spent half the money on those basic safety net resources, and we would have cut drug use and addiction probably in half along with it.
Absolutely. Karin, thank you so much. And this is really resonating with so many people. Susan is sharing that her son was a heroin addict for years. She thinks his girlfriend had something to do with his death, but she can't prove it. She was a habitual liar and con artist, and she lost her son last year at the age of 35. Susan, I'm so sorry. Thank you for sharing that story with us. And I hope that seeing compassionate characters rendered by Karin on the page is some source of comfort and for you, and just to know you're not alone. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being here. She said rehab and withdrawal did not help him.
Yeah.
We wanted him to get clean, but it wasn't possible, and we still feel guilty. You are not alone, Susan. And I
Yeah.
know you did all you can. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story.
That's a lot of guilt to carry. I mean, that people don't understand the impact that drug abuse has on families and communities, and there's no right way to do it. People talk about tough love. They talk about all kinds, and honestly, there's no magic formula. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it. And we just don't.
We don't do it. Sheila sharing that her country, her county has really progressive programs, but she lives in a large college town. She said the book touches on the Oxy scandal. I was happy to read the current events. George saying, Karin, you are a breath of fresh air. No nonsense, straight from the hip, logical, common sense, hilarious. I love your interviews. White House 2024. George, I love it. I'd vote for Karin. I think we all would. This is fantastic. He said you are speaking absolute truth here today. And that he's adding that Susan, he's very sorry for your loss as well. We all are. And thank you for being here again with us today. I'm going to go back here to some questions that I think I missed a few minutes ago. Sharon is saying, I haven't had the best day today, but this is cheering me up. Thank you, Sharon, for being here. Top community member, always great to have you. Carrie says, how do you get out of such a dark place writing dark crime books? What do you do to lighten up? What do you do, Karen? Do you take a bath? Do you take a walk? Do you read a romance? Do you watch Bridgerton? What's going on over there?
Well, of course, I love Bridgerton. But how ridiculous was that? I mean, did everybody at some point go, come on, man?
Yeah, sure did. But I also was just eating that popcorn and loving it.
Yeah, right. I was totally in for it. So, I put a lot of humor in the books. I lighten things. I'm very careful to balance out certain scenes. So you might have something really bad happen in the book, but then, you have Faith in the Will Trent series say something really funny, or, she goes home and her kid's like hidden all her mittens and Faith bought like 80,000 pair already, just small things like that, small relatable things. Cause I think it's very important to balance that out. And I feel that way in life. I love just getting on the treadmill. I like to just go for like a couple hours at a time and watch my shows, as my grandmother used to say. But I like silence. I'm really introverted. I like being alone. That's sort of my restorative moment, is just being alone with my thoughts and, thinking about what the next story is going to be and the twists and turns I'm going to put in the books. And I mean, I know that's kind of work, but it's also a stress outlet for me.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your unwinding practices. George is saying he loved that you said cats are assholes because they can be.
True.
She said, Heidi said, just when I thought no better quote could be said, this Ariana Grande story came out fantastic. Vicky saying you can feel very proud of yourself that your books are so memorable. Not a lot of authors can say that. Catherine is laughing along with us. Susan says she lives in South Carolina. She loves fried chicken, butter beans, and collards. What do you eat to stay healthy? Karin, tell us what you eat.
I love all those things too, but it's like my first thought was cornbread or biscuit or both, right? I just try to balance it out. I eat a lot of salads, honestly. My grandmother's probably spinning in her grave for me saying that. But it's really, really hard. And I remember I had a friend come from England to visit us, and we took her to this family serve restaurant where they had cream corn and casseroles and fried chicken and country fried steak. Yum. And she said, my God, no wonder Americans are so fat. The food is delicious. I'm like, well, yeah, this is not spotted dick. This is real meat on your bones food. I love Southern food so much. And I'm very mindful that I have to do it just in moderation, which as a Southerner is a very hard thing to do.
For all of us. Absolutely. I mean, because I could eat a buttermilk biscuit with honey butter just about every day. So this is, we all can relate to that. Leslie's saying this is such an amazing interview. I've truly enjoyed this, and I live with a couple of assholes with the cat emoji. Love that. Debbie Lee Barnes says, first of all, Karin, I love all of your books. The characters are just so well drawn, and the plot just keeps me wanting more. Your depiction of the pandemic makes it feel like it is happening again. Absolutely. You really managed to ramp that up with such intensity. Was that hard for you to do, or because we just are sort of coming out of it, hopefully, or you were still in it?
Well, what was difficult was, when I write a standalone novel, when I get to what feels like the halfway point, I go back and do something that I don't do until then, which is start from page 1 and read it through, right? And normally I'm checking for voice. Is the Lee you met in this first chapter believable? Is she making believable choices? Is her tone the same? Because it's very important to me that characters don't all sound the same or believe the same or think the same things are funny. So I just really try to look for that balance. But with this in particular, it was like, holy crap, I cannot believe how much our lives have changed so quickly because of the pandemic, and how it's just integrated, just the fact that I don't stand as close to people as I used to. Right. Yes. And I am very mindful. Like, I was in the Ingalls up in Blue Ridge a few days ago, and somebody sneezed, and I was like, yes. So that kind of thing was really, it was just odd to look at it, our lives from the outside. And so I was doing this in May, June. And that's about the point in 2020 that we all decided, we're sick of COVID. It doesn't exist anymore. And so we all went out, and because it was a summer, of course, we were outside, and so people had airflow and this sort of thing. So the cases were not as horrific. And then, summer was over. We were all back inside again, and we had all these, case numbers just shoot up. So it was really strange to write about it as we were living it, but also to try to make it not intrude into the story.
Well, you also share in your author note at the end, you had to be a bit psychic, look into your crystal ball and try to predict where the heck we were going to be in a year. I mean, and I think back to where I was a year ago mentally, and I could have never predicted we would be here. So, you did such a fantastic job of that. I loved that part of the book. So thank you for sharing the backstory of that. Karen King Matlock would like to know, what is your favorite place to write, and how involved are you or were you with the Netflix adaptation of Pieces of Her?
So my favorite place to write is my cabin in North Georgia. My dad built it for me 20 years ago. He charged me, but he was the builder. So, it's a really personal place for me. It feels very comfortable and like home. But, it's also gotten to the point where it's like this mental set where I get there and my brain says, okay, it's time to write. And so it has this Pavlovian effect. And as far as Netflix, I've been super lucky that they've included me in a lot of things. They filmed in Australia. They were set to start filming at the beginning of the pandemic in Vancouver. And then that, of course, was shut down because of the pandemic. Yeah. But the producer is Australian. Tony Collette, who's one of the stars, or the star, is Australian. So they were like, let's just do this in Australia. Netflix was great. They're like, let's figure it out. And so they filmed there for about, I think, 3 months. And then they came to Atlanta. I actually got to go on set and see how it was done. It was really fascinating, to think that something I wrote in my pajamas in my cabin 3 years ago, here are hundreds of people and extras and cars and all this, playing out this scene I wrote. And they've been great. They've let me read scripts. The writers have asked me about character and motivation. And obviously they've had to make some changes. Maybe people don't remember in the book, Andy, the young daughter, a lot of her time is spent in a car driving, and that's not riveting TV. So, they had to make some changes, and I agree with the changes. I can't wait to see what they come up with. It really is it feels great.
Yay, that feels great. And that's fantastic to know that you were so involved, so respected, so included, and so integral. Because I think we always think like, oh no, is the writer going to get included? Is this going to stay true to the story? And is the writer going to get to be included? And it's so wonderful and so exciting to know that you are. Oh my God, I lived in Australia, and I have loved Toni Collette since Muriel's Wedding.
Yeah.
Who else loves Toni Collette? And that wonderful show, Unbelievable, based on the true story about the two rapists. Oh my God, so good. Sharon saying she can't wait to see pieces of her. She loves Toni Collette. Susan echoing, can't wait for the movie. This is so great. And it's really cool to know that it happened in Australia. So thank you for that. I want to remind everybody that you can grab your copy of False Witness today. I'm putting it in putting the link in all of the chats, no matter where you're watching it from. Grab your copy of False Witness from Murder by the Book today, so that you can see what we're talking about. You can get into the story and hear about Lee and Callie and their mom and all of these characters, and hear what we're talking about. You're gonna love it. And as Karin said, going as a writer who's written so many books that have been so widely published, it's really cool to know that this was a growth spurt for you, Karin, and that you feel that came out on the page. I absolutely love that. I mean, I think you're always fantastic, but I love knowing that you feel like that this was a step for you. And so many are agreeing. My God, Camilla Lackberg, who was on the show 2 weeks ago, said that she thinks this is your best yet. It was unput downable. She is fantastic. She's a hoot.
Mm-hmm.
And you were awarded, and I always say you didn't get this. You earned, starred reviews after starred review after starred review. We have one more question from Margaret Pernard. She said, what is your best tip for visualizing a story that will give your readers the same satisfaction that they've come to expect, but with a twist? Yeah, Karin, you've given us so much. How do you keep doing that?
I'm still interested in it, and I think you can tell when an author is sort of just, oh, this is my job. I need to write another book, and I need to make it a little different from the last one, but it's basically the same story. And, and those books are great. If that's what you want to read, it's a good mind candy. But I want people to think, and I want to feel challenged with my work. I want to make sure that I'm delivering the best book that I can. And part of that is, I remember when I was a poor college student, how much I went to school at night and I worked during the day. And I remember having to save up my money to buy a hardcover book from my favorite author, and how many hours of my life that took, how it took away from everything else. And if I felt like that author had just kind of written what they could and phoned it in, I took that very personally.
Yes.
So, you may not love a book, or you may not love it as much as another one, or whatever. Whatever's wrong with you if you don't like my books. But you can never say that I didn't try my best and that I didn't try to do something new and interesting. And because I think it's so insulting to just phone it in. That's not the kind of writer I want to be. And I've for 21 books felt excited about every book I've started. And I've always had this push to remember that little college student and how important it is to make sure that I deliver the most interesting, fascinating, twisty, turny story I can.
Oh, I love that, Karin. And it's so true. I worked my way through college too. I saved my pennies for my books. Even growing up, I got 2 books for my birthday and 2 books for Christmas. And I just remember thinking, what books will I ask Santa for? What books will I ask my parents for my birthday? Because I only got those 4 books a year and they were so precious to me. And absolutely, when it's been phoned in, I take it as a personal affront, even though now I'm blessed to be able to afford books. And so I just so resonate with everything you're saying. Leslie saying she calls those formula books. Sharon saying your books never disappoint. Bonnie is saying, I met you years ago at an event at Cuyahoga County Library in Cleveland. I would love to see you visit us again.
Yeah, Cuyahoga, woo! One of my favorite library systems. They're fantastic. Yeah.
Are you going? I know I've been seeing on your Instagram that you're getting out to some local bookstores. Karen, are you going to other bookstores?
No, but I hope, if we are able to, that I'll be able to go on a proper tour next year. And that's a system I've been to many times. It's I think one of the best systems in the country.
Wow. High praise. Okay. Last question, because I see we're over time. This one from Alyssa Oberg from the Book Recommendations Facebook group. She said, I haven't been able to pick up any of your books yet, but now I'd love to start. What is your favorite book that you would recommend on where she should start? Should she start with False Witness? Should she start somewhere else?
Well, False Witness is a standalone, so that's a nice one to start with. But, it's a hardcover. If you're looking for a paperback, I think Pretty Girls. If you can read Pretty Girls, you probably know everything you need to know about what my books are going to give you. And so all the rest, hopefully they'll be like potato chips. You'll just keep picking them up.
Oh my God, I love potato chips, especially those Pringles, but really just anything. Leslie Lloyd from Bitchy Bookworms is saying, I love this book and this woman, full stop. Leslie, you are all of us. With that, I just want to say, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Karin, thank you for joining us. This has been an honor, a highlight, and a privilege to host you. You are incredible. Your intention, your authenticity, your talent. I am just mind blown that you continue to produce over and over and over again at this level. Thank you for all that you do on the page and off. You're getting so many hearts up from Facebook. Y'all have a great rest of your week. I will see you tomorrow with 2 more interviews. And Karin, please come back and talk to us next time your book is out. We absolutely loved having you.
Absolutely. Thank you.